Galway man, we're going to claim him. It's great to see such a crowd here. Great to see such a local crowd here. Because, you know, Writers' Week, Stroke, the Listowel Library Festival, started out with its heart in Listowel, Father Tony Goffin and all those people, John Beakley and Brian McMahon. And we grew outwards, and we're still reaching out, but we're still digging in deep to our own culture as well, our own native culture. We have, as I said, we have 2 books to launch. The first book is Paddy O Callaghan's book, Gaelic and Free. His son, Father Brendan, is here, and his niece, his granddaughter, Elizabeth Scanlon, is here as well as his grandson, Billy Scanlon. Now, I was a Mount George scholar in the same parish as Paddy O Callaghan. Paddy O Callaghan was principal teacher in Knockanure, and I wound up as principal teacher in my van like a million years later. But anyway, my recollection of Paddy O Callaghan is when we were young, there used to be huge commemorations around the 12th of May, the annual commemoration for the boys in Gurtadlana. And I remember going up there, and Paddy O Callaghan was instrumental in having the monument erected there. And I remember him speaking very passionately about republicanism. He was a Republican, he was a teacher, he was a good lawyer. As a matter of fact, I understand that he taught Irish to Thomas MacDonagh, the signatory of the Proclamation of Independence. So that's, you'll hear more about Paddy O Callaghan later on. I want to introduce you to the first speaker here tonight, his son, Father Padraig O'Callaghan, a long-time, old-time friend of mine. He is a Knockanure man, he was a footballer, and a damn good footballer. He told a story about the late Billy McCarthy in the war. Many will remember Billy McCarthy playing football, a fine gentleman. And many the tussle Father Brendan had with himself on the football field. But when Father Brendan got ordained, Billy McCarthy was cycling in from the wall, and he saw Father Brendan in the square in the stone. He threw down his bike and he said, "Never mind the aim at football, Brendan, give me your blessing." Father Brendan has been a long-time friend of mine. When he used to say Mass in Knockanure at 10 o'clock in the morning, we used to go up there every morning. Paddy Kennedy and the Clancy's and Mary Mulvan and Mary Callaghan and all these people. Paddy Kennedy, as I said, and they're very welcome, the Knockanure people and my van people here, as well as the Listowel people, Filename people, and various other people. But Father Brendan went to England. He was playing a football match, he told me one time in Listowel, and Father Jim Leahy came in. He was a parish priest in England, and he said to Father Brendan, he wasn't a clerical student at the time, he said, "We have a great shortage of priests in England." And that was the beginning of Father Brendan's vocation. He was ordained as a priest, and he served among other places in Grantham. And can I introduce you please to my great friend, Father Brendan O'Callaghan.
Get some inspiration from the Holy Ghost. I hope he's around someplace. Yes, men again is sporting. The sport is stuff. And my mother, bless her, had a lovely truism which says, "It's as harmful to withhold praise as to give blame." See, it's so easy to be negative, isn't it? In our attitudes, in the comments we make, in the remarks we make about people and places and events that happen. So I want to go on the other direction, as it were, and strike a more positive note. I want to begin by acknowledging the vision and foresight and expertise of the men and women and community that gave birth, nourished and established Writers' Week here in Listowel. My father also had a truism, which simply said, if you have a story, write it down, because it never happened, otherwise it never happened. So, holding him true to his own words, we got him to sit down in the front room, near the fire, and got him to put a pen to paper and write his own story. From the day he was born, in a little place called Coshaun, in Murriok, in the Gaelic in Dingle, to the day he died in our family home in Knockanure. And as they say, the rest is history. This book is his story, his history. I want to thank Writers' Week for giving our family the opportunity of launching this book. Because to me it's a story of faith and family, friendship and freedom. Thanks to all of you for being present to the story that's been told. And I hope that through this story you will experience your own history and your own heritage. End of the homily.
Editor of the book, Paddy O Callaghan's granddaughter, Elizabeth, living Scandinavia, and I knew her mother very well, Maureen. She taught him Knockanure for a while. I met her in Galway several times, the Hungry Grass, would you believe? And she edited the book. She's done a fantastic job on this book. It is a wonderful book. Father Brendan gave me a copy of it some time ago. It's a wonderful read. It's a great addition to parts of Father Tony got in the Stone's vicinity. Padraig got the story as well, and it's all part of our history, and here is Elizabeth Scandinavia.
I can only echo Brendan's thanks to Listowel Writers' Week for giving us this great opportunity, and thank you, Gabriel, for the lovely introduction. And I have to call out Moira Logue as well, who is some sort of powerhouse of organisation. And you know, as Brendan said, this book started out as 2 school copybooks with handwritten Irish in Clog Gaelic script, which wouldn't be in this form today without the patient and sensitive translation of Moira Iarnon and the wonderful design and layout of Jane Stark. I also want to thank Jennifer Matthews of Lettertech for all her support of the publication. And thank you, Listowel Library, for this beautiful venue. And thank you, the Leaving Cert students, for giving us the study space just for our launch. We really appreciate it, and all the best. And heartfelt thanks to you for being here today to celebrate this launch with us. Myself and my siblings, we never met our grandfather, Padraig O'Callaghan, but through Brendan's recollections and our work on the book, we have really gotten to know him. And when we walk around the streets of Listowel and the roads of Knockanure, we can feel the history closer to us after having worked on this book. Now, as Brendan was saying, Padraig O'Callaghan was brought up in Maria outside Dingle, just one generation away from the dark period of the famine, which, you know, for us is consigned to history books. And his father was born in Maria in 1846, right in the middle of the famine. And all his father's siblings emigrated to the US and Canada, and their small family shop in Maria distributed the charity meal during that time. So Padraig was born in 1888, one of 6 children, and he remembered himself in his words, "When I was young, there was a small piece of land stretching from the port to the road by the blacksmith's house. It was open land, not bounded by walls. My grandmother told me crowds gathered here during the famine to be beside the beach and the rocks for supplies of food. Food from the sea, fish, limpets, periwinkles, dulse, seagrass, seaweed, and so on. Hundreds died there and they were buried under the sand. When I was growing up, several human bones were visible from there and from there down to the beach. The old people told us to always bury the bones underground, and we did." As a teenager, Padraig went to school in Dingle, which involved walking the 7 miles from Maria in and out every day, which took up to 2 hours, which actually is not a bad pace, although he sometimes got a lift. And I'll read his description in Irish first, and you must forgive me if I do some mispronunciation. "Bhí asal agus cart ag farm fuist, Johnny the Post. Asal liavón clúvach aba é, agus má bhí cíl cín nó ceanige riamh ag anbhí cahar cosach, bhí roinnt mór sa breis dé ag an asal seo. Tugadh sé farm fuist go dtí an dagan ó baile na gáil gach maidin ag tríal ar na litricha. Rodella, bhí Johnny litricha a seachada na títhar ar taobh an bóthar ar a bhealach gohaile. Aníos a rís éimeis marciacht ó Johnny ó bhar an bhóma go dagan. I rís séisiúr an isci ba bhíon leis an cuidirta, mar béidir leis sreacha bra colata a dhéanamh sa chóirt. Ísgra aba é táisaga, agus bhíodh sé tuirseach nátha tar éis na híthe ar tucha na bhuaige ag cóirt. Las muide seo, banad a bhíodh marciacht le fáilgain, mar bhíodh sé róbhach ar maidin agus ródhéanamh tróna. There was a donkey and cart, the postman's, Johnny the Post. The donkey was greyish white and furry, and if there was ever a 4-legged animal with sense and experience, this one had it in abundance. He used to bring the postman to Dingle from Ballydavid every morning to collect the post. And in addition, Johnny had to deliver letters to the roadside houses on his way home. Now and again, we got a lift from Johnny from the top of the hill to Dingle. During the mackerel fishing season, he liked the company as he could have a good snooze in the cart. He was a fisherman and he would feel worn out with exhaustion after spending the night on the seat of a curragh drift netting. Apart from this, we were often unable to get a lift because it was too early in the morning and too late in the evening. Now, after school, Padraig became a travelling teacher with the Gaelic League, and the travelling teachers were sent all around the country to teach Irish and to promote the revival of the language after the disastrous effects of the famine and the exclusion of Irish from schools and business life at that time. And teaching of Irish by the travelling teachers was only permitted to take place outside normal school hours. And this ignited his love of teaching, and he trained to be a primary school teacher in De La Salle College, Waterford, and afterwards he completed his diploma in education in UCD. And his teaching profession led him to a position in the boys' school in Knockanure. And we have a former pupil of Padraig's here with us today who has excellent Irish, so I think we know he was a good teacher of Irish, Tom. And he was in Knockanure that he was working as a volunteer in the War of Independence as well as teaching. And it was in Knockanure in 1922 that he was captured by the Free State Army due to his vocal opposition to the treaty. At daybreak on 3rd October 1922, the Free State Army attacked the parish and captured 9 people, including myself. Of course, they knew everything about me, that I was an officer in the Republican Army, a member of the Executive District Council of Sinn Féin, and especially that I was hard at work in my own place and further away in opposition to the treaty. and Padraig describes how the prisoners began a prolonged journey by road and by boat to the internment camp. They were held in Tralee and Limerick prison on the way. We were woken early on Saturday morning, 25th of November 1922. The ground was covered in frost. Half naked and fully famished, we were thrown without pity or kindness into lorries. We had no idea what was to happen until we reached the quay again, where the old coal ship Filename was tied up awaiting our arrival. We found out in a short while that Dublin was our destination. There were over 400 prisoners on board. In addition, there was a large body of soldiers as well as the ship's crew. We sailed out the Shannon estuary, south past the Kerry coast, southeast past Cork and Cove, of a Sunday morning without holy orders, mass or sacraments. The weather was fine so far. However, when we were approaching the Wexford coast, we ran into a terrible storm and rough seas with winds of 80 miles an hour and huge, enormous foamy billows that threw the old ship from one wave to the next like a cork. The ship was top-heavy too, as it lacked ballast. As a result, it was very unsteady in the water. The crew were fearful and in dread. The soldiers were much worse. The prisoners were so weak and so worn out due to lack of food and sleep that they could not care less whether they were up or down, alive or dead, there or not. They were prepared, however, to come before God if that was his holy will. When the ship turned northwards from Wexford to Dublin, a mighty billow hit it sideways, threw it to one side and nearly submerged it. The storm had abated by evening, and the old ship was able to plough ahead again. We reached port on Monday 27th November 1922. It was such an awful sight. Hundreds in uniform, armoured cars, big guns, uproar and confusion, covered lorries, all around a body of miserable people, the prisoners, who did not have the strength to sneeze. We were transported in the lorries to the train stop, and on the train, where the train stops, on the Curragh of Kildare, and the lorries again through the wide open plains of the Curragh to Hare Park Camp. There was a large number of prisoners here when we arrived. It was open 2 days before, and by the time we had settled in, there were up to 800 men in total there, from all parts of Ireland. In the camp were 60 feet by 20 feet zinc and asbestos huts, laid out in 4 lines. One large one was a dining place, and another a chapel. By this stage, rashes, blisters, boils and stomach illnesses were prevalent among our group. Some of us were at death's door. Immediate action was required. A camp committee was formed, and with the assistance and advice of the doctor, medical treatment was demanded of the Free State authorities. Some medicines were sent in after a while, plus a bath in which the sick were able to take sulphur baths. As time passed, the sick men started to improve from the diseases, although it took some months for some of them to be completely free of disease. I was one of those men. Christmas had come. So Padraig spent 1 year interned in Hare Park Camp, and the prisoners organised themselves, even doing craft work and Irish classes, of course, and they even had a handwritten camp magazine on Gorea, the hare. On his release, he continued to teach despite dismissals, but it was not to be Padraig's last time imprisoned. In 1931, by then married to Bessie Cronin of Knockanure, herself a captain in Command, he was arrested, accused of giving military orders at a Republican gathering, a charge that even the arresting guards admitted they knew not to be true. Nevertheless, he ended up in Cork prison. But the prison authorities may have got more than they bargained for. But you can read more about this in the book. Now, although Padraig endured hardship and difficulty, he describes a peaceful and fulfilling life in Knockanure after his imprisonments. We settled down then in 1932, my wife and I, to fulfill the duties of the Holy Sacrament of Marriage, to live in harmony and love, and to raise our family in the love and fear of God. As time passed, the children started to arrive. God bless them, and thank God. Father Padraig Austin, Mairead Moira, a teacher. Father Tomás Brendon, Seamus Antona, artist and teacher. They are all happy and content now in 1965, and they all have their own careers, thanks be to God. And nothing pleases them more than to visit the old homestead, and they say, as they used to say so often when they were young, that there is no place like home. And indeed, today we are delighted to be home in Listowel for Writers' Week, the launch of Padraig's Memoirs, and possibly a bit of racing as well. The copies of the book are for sale here, and Brendan will be happy to sign, and of course they're also available on the Lettertech website. Gura míle má gréibh ríis, agus tásúla gom go mani sibh panú freisin as Philip Mac Mooney, agus seachtain na scríbhneoirí.